They say nothing can prepare you for Pelican Bay. Not the stories, not the news reports, not even county jail. The moment you step off that transport bus, you feel it. A coldness that isn't just the Northern California air. It's the silence. The kind of silence that feels like the world itself stepped back from this place. The officers don't shout here. They don't need to. The walls do the talking. Tall, pale concrete, thick enough to swallow sound. Every hallway feels like it was designed to erase you, your footsteps, your voice, your identity. When the steel door closes behind you for the first time, the sound is sharp, final, like the world is making its last announcement about you. They take you through processing. It's routine, but the fear slips in quietly. Some men hide it behind blank faces. Others can't. You can see it in the small tremble in their hands, as they're told where they're being housed. And then there's the SHU, the Secure Housing Unit. The officers call it the Bay within the Bay, a place built for the most isolated confinement in the state. The door opens to your assigned cell. No bars, just a solid steel door with a small slot, a narrow window you can't see through, and a concrete box waiting inside. You step in, the door shuts, and that's when it hits you. This room, this tiny space, is now your entire world. No voices, no movement, no color, just the hum of the ventilation system and the weight of your own breathing. Some men describe their first night as a fight with themselves, a battle between panic and acceptance, between the fear of losing your mind and the determination to stay human in a place designed to break that. You lie on the thin mattress. You stare at the ceiling. Minutes stretch into hours, and somewhere deep in the silence, you realize something. In Pelican Bay, surviving isn't about strength. It's about holding on to the smallest pieces of yourself and refusing to let the darkness take them. This is where the story begins, beyond the steel doors, where forgotten men finally speak out. Behind every steel door in Pelican Bay, there's a story, and none of them are simple. Some men arrived here after years of violence, others after one mistake that spiraled too far. A few have been here so long. Their memories of freedom feel like scenes from someone else's life. But the moment the morning count finishes, and the tear settles into that familiar hush, you begin to sense the presence of the men around you. Even though you rarely see them, you feel them. To your left is Ramirez. He's been in the SHU for 11 years. They say he used to be quick to anger, but now his voice is calm, almost gentle. When he speaks through the vent, he reads constantly. Philosophy, history, anything he can get his hands on. In this place, books are the closest thing to open air. On the right is Darnell, tall, quiet, and observant, a man who learned early that speaking too much can be dangerous in a world built on secrets. He taps messages through the wall, a rhythm inmates developed long before most officers working today were even born, a rhythm that says, I'm still here. You're not alone. Then there's Ghost. No one knows his real name. No one ever hears him talk. But every night, just before lights out, he slides small drawings under the edge of his door. Charcoal sketches made from burnt paper and toothpaste. Scenes of oceans, mountains, birds. Things none of these men have seen in years. He never asks for anything back. He just gives them to remind others what the outside world looks like. And once in a while, the entire tier comes alive when Torres speaks. A lifer with a voice like gravel and a memory like a library. He tells stories from his childhood, from the days before the gangs, before the anger, before the choices that led him here. His stories travel through vents and doors, echoing down the concrete hallway like a reminder that even in a place built to mute people, the human voice finds a way to survive. These men, hidden behind doors, erased from the world, stripped of everything but time, carry histories heavier than the concrete around them. You may never see their faces, but you learn their rhythms, their breathing, their silences. In Pelican Bay, you don't meet people by shaking their hands. You meet them by hearing their stories. One whisper, one tap, one shared moment of vulnerability at a time. And slowly, you begin to understand that everyone here, every man buried in these shadows, is fighting two battles, one with the system outside and one with the darkness inside. This chapter of survival isn't written on paper. It's spoken through vents, carved into walls, and held inside memories that refuse to fade, no matter how deep the isolation goes. Isolation is a strange thing. At first, you think the silence will be your enemy, but over time, you learn it's the silence inside your own mind that becomes a real threat. In Pelican Bay's SHU, days don't feel like days. They stretch, long, thin, and heavy, like pulled wire that never breaks, but never releases tension either. You wake up to the same view every morning. A concrete wall, a dim light, the faint hum of air vents pushing recycled air into a space that hasn't felt fresh wind in decades. No sunlight touches your skin. No voices echo naturally. Everything is filtered, controlled, measured. Some men pace their cells for hours, creating invisible paths on the concrete floor. Left corner, right corner, back to the door. Again, again, again. A ritual of movement to fight the feeling of sinking into the walls. Others lie on their bunks, staring at the ceiling, searching for cracks or patterns that can give their mind something to hold on to, a distraction, a lifeline, something to keep the thoughts from spiraling. Because in the SHU, your mind becomes its own universe, and not always a kind one. You start thinking about the people you hurt, the mistakes you made, the moments you ignored, because life outside moved too fast to stop and face them. But here, everything stops. There's nowhere to run from your thoughts. Some nights you hear it, the quiet breakdowns, a man whispering to himself, another breathing too fast, someone tapping the wall as if the rhythm could pull him back from falling apart. Officers walk the tier, but they don't hear the battles happening behind the doors. They only hear what breaks the routine. Shouting, banging, a man who finally loses his grip and screams into the darkness. The isolation changes people. Some grow calmer, as if the world has slowed enough for them to finally see their own reflection. Others grow harder, their hearts turning into stone. To survive the crushing weight of solitude, the dangerous part isn't the loneliness. It's the way the SHU holds a mirror to every mistake, every regret, every memory you'd rather forget. And as you sit there in that concrete box, the silence presses in on you, not to kill you, but to test you, to see whether you can hold onto your sense of self when the world has taken everything else. In Pelican Bay, the isolation doesn't break you all at once. It chips away slowly, quietly, day after day. And each morning when you open your eyes, you ask yourself the same question. Who am I becoming? In the silence? In a place like Pelican Bay, survival isn't just physical. It's mental, emotional, and strategic. The men here live by codes, unwritten rules that have kept generations of inmates alive long before today. Some of these codes are simple. Some are complicated. All of them are necessary. The first rule is respect, not fear, not dominance, just respect. Because one careless word, one moment of disrespect can spark a chain reaction that no one can stop once it starts. Even in the SHU, where men never touch, rarely see each other, and communicate through steel and concrete, respect travels through walls. A man apologizes through the vent, another acknowledges with a tap. Conflicts are settled with a few quiet sentences, instead of fists, not because anyone is afraid, but because out here, everyone understands how fragile sanity is. No one wants more chaos than the walls already create. The second code is silence, not the silence the prison forces on you, the silence you choose. You don't speak on others' business. You don't repeat rumors. You don't give the officers anything that could pit one man against another. In this world, words can be weapons, and silence can be a shield. The third code is observation. You watch everything. The tone in a man's voice, the way he breathes, the rhythm of his pacing, what he asks for, what he doesn't ask for. Because in a place where you almost never see faces, you learn to read people without eyes. You notice when someone is slipping mentally, when someone is boiling with anger, when someone is desperate. And even though there are dangers, there are also moments of quiet brotherhood, moments when a man will slide part of his meal under another's door, or talk someone down from the edge with nothing but a calm voice through the vent. The fourth code is routine. Routine is survival. Some men wake up at the same time every day, do push-ups until their arms shake, clean their cell even if there's nothing to clean, recite prayers, memorize poems, anything to hold their mind together, because without structure, the days melt into each other, until you forget what year it is. And finally, the most important code. Never let the place define you. The prison may control your body, but your identity, your dignity, that's something you carry inside. You hear men say this all the time. This place can take everything but my mind. But holding on to that isn't easy. It's a daily fight, a choice you make in the face of concrete and steel. That keeps trying to erase you. These codes aren't written in any handbook. They aren't passed down formally. They live through whispers, through lived experience, through the quiet guidance of men who have survived long enough to understand the cost of breaking them. And when you're locked in a world where danger doesn't come from fists, but from fear, desperation, and isolation, these codes become the thin line between losing yourself and staying human. In a place built on walls, locks, and silence, you wouldn't expect to find moments of light. But the truth is, even in Pelican Bay, even in the SHU, humanity has a way of slipping through the cracks. Sometimes it comes quietly, sometimes unexpectedly, but it comes. One of the first moments you notice is sharing. It sounds simple, but in a world where every man has almost nothing, sharing is a profound act of generosity. A packet of coffee, half a ramen, a piece of fruit from a lunch tray, something small enough to fit through the tiny gap under the cell door, but big enough to remind someone that he isn't invisible. Ghost, the man who never speaks, slides his drawings under the doors at night. No signature, no message, just images of life beyond the prison. Waves crashing on a beach, a child flying a kite, clouds drifting across an open sky. The men keep those drawings like treasure, a reminder that beauty still exists somewhere. Then there's the way inmates talk to each other, through the vents late at night, not about crime, not about gangs, about memories, about their kids, their regrets, their dreams, conversations that would never happen in the yard, but in the quiet darkness, with nothing to prove and no eyes watching. Men speak their truths. You hear Torres tell the story of the first time he learned how to ride a bike. You hear Ramirez recite lines from a book he memorized because the words helped him survive a panic attack. You hear Darnell talk about his brother, a brother he hasn't seen since he was 16. These moments are small, but in the SHU, they become lifelines. There's humanity in the kindness of an officer, too. The rare ones who treat you like a person, not a number. Maybe they slide your food tray a little slower, so they don't bang it against the steel. Maybe they say your name instead of your cell number. Maybe they slip a second bar of soap, because they notice you're struggling. Little things. But in a place where every day feels the same, little things can echo louder than shouts. And then there are the sounds, the unexpected laughter that rolls through the vents. When someone cracks a joke, a moment so rare that everyone pauses just to feel it. For a few seconds, the walls don't feel as tight. The concrete doesn't feel as cold. The isolation doesn't feel as heavy. Because even here, behind steel doors, behind silence, behind the hardest stories, humanity refuses to die. It hides in whispered conversations, in shared food, in drawings made with burnt paper, in the courage it takes for broken men to open themselves, for even a moment. And as these moments pass through the darkness, you realize something powerful. The system can cage the body, but not the human spirit. Violence in prison is not like the movies. No flashy scenes. No dramatic fights. In Pelican Bay, especially in SHU, violence is quiet, sudden, and leaves behind a shadow that stays longer than bruises or scars. Most men here have seen more violence than they care to admit. Some grew up around it. Some learned it as survival. Some regret it every day they spend behind these steel doors. But no matter how tough anyone claims to be, the truth is simple. Violence always comes with a price. You hear it in the tired voices that whisper through vents at night. You see it in the eyes of a man who won't speak for days, after hearing someone down the tier lose control. Even in the SHU, where inmates are locked away from each other, violence finds its way in, not because people want it, but because years of isolation, fear, and pressure can twist a mind into something unrecognizable. Sometimes it starts with anger, a man pacing for hours, breathing too hard, talking to himself, arguing with memories only he can hear. And then, a sudden crash against the door, a shout, a scream, officers rushing in with shields and commands, trying to stop a man who isn't fighting anyone but himself. Other times, it's quieter, a man who just stops talking, stops eating, stops moving, violence turned inward, until he begins to disappear from the inside out. Then there are the stories from before the SHU, stories men don't like to tell, but sometimes they slip out in the late-night conversations. A fight on the yard, a moment of fear mistaken for disrespect, a split-second decision that changed the next 20 years of their life. Most of them speak about it the same way, with a heavy voice, not proud, not bragging, just honest. I wish I walked away. I wish I thought twice. I wish I knew the cost. Because the price isn't just time in a cell. The price is the guilt that creeps in during the long, silent nights. The memories that replay over and over in a place where there's nothing else to distract you. The thought of the people hurt, physically or emotionally, and the pain that doesn't end just because the fight did. In Pelican Bay, every man has a moment he wishes he could take back. A moment that brought him here. A moment that cost him years of sunlight, touch, freedom, and connection. And as you listen to these stories, spoken quietly through steel and concrete, you begin to understand something deeper. Most men here aren't monsters. They're humans who grew up in broken places, made desperate choices, or got caught in cycles of violence that started long before they ever saw a prison. The price they pay now is not just time, it's reflection, regret, and the silent weight of learning too late what violence truly takes away. In this chapter of the Bay, you realize it's not the fights that haunt these men. It's the silence that follows, when there's nothing left but thoughts, and the thin hope that life outside these steel doors might still offer redemption. In Pelican Bay, mail is more than paper. It is oxygen. It is the thin thread connecting a man to a world he can no longer touch. When the mail cart rolls down the tier, you can feel the energy shift, a quiet tension, a small spark of hope, in a place designed to crush hope. Some men pretend not to wait for it. They sit on their bunks, staring at the wall as if the world outside no longer matters to them. But the moment the officer's footsteps slow in front of their door, you see it. The quick breath, the slight lift of the head, the whispered prayer. That may be this time. Someone remembered them. A letter from the outside isn't just ink and paper. It is presence. It is proof that somewhere, someone still says your name, without a number attached to it. For many men in the SHU, mail is the only way to feel human. Ramirez receives letters from his sister every month. Short messages. A few lines about work, about her kids, about the weather. Nothing dramatic, nothing poetic. But he reads them again and again, folds them carefully, and stores them under his mattress, like sacred artifacts. Darnell waits for letters from his mother. She writes in big, shaky handwriting, as if every word takes effort. Sometimes the letter is just 2 sentences. I'm praying for you. Stay strong. But those two sentences can lift a man out of the darkest week. Some inmates go years without a single letter. Those are the men who grow quieter over time, the ones who stare at the mail cart but pretend they don't care when it rolls past their door. And then there's the hardest part, the day the letters stop. A man who used to get mail every week suddenly receives nothing for months. You hear the sadness in his voice. When he asks through the vent, "Did the mail come today?" Even though he already knows the answer. Sometimes families move on. Sometimes people get tired. Sometimes life outside shifts in ways a man inside cannot understand. But when a letter does come, after weeks, months, or even years, the sound of that envelope sliding through the slot is like a heartbeat returning to a body thought dead. Some men cry reading them. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears, rolling down faces that forgot how to be soft. A child's drawing, a photo of a niece he's never met, a folded card that smells faintly of the outside world, perfume, cigarettes, rain, anything, small details that remind you that life is still happening somewhere. And then there are the letters the inmates themselves write, pages and pages, turned into lifelines, apologies, memories, questions about family, promises for the future. They write even when no one replies, because writing gives shape to emotions that would otherwise drown them in silence. In Pelican Bay, connection is rare, affection is rare. Words from the outside are often the only proof that a man hasn't been forgotten. And as you listen to the rustle of envelopes, the soft crackle of paper unfolding, the trembling sighs of men who haven't felt warmth in years, you realize something. Prison locks doors. Isolation locks minds. But letters open windows. Windows big enough for hope to climb through. Change is slow in Pelican Bay. It doesn't arrive like a sunrise. Bright, obvious, impossible to ignore. Here, change comes quietly, like a breeze slipping under the door. Barely noticeable unless you're paying attention. For some men, that change begins with a single moment of clarity. For others, it comes from something as small as a book, a letter, or a memory that refuses to fade. In the SHU, where every day looks like the one before it, there isn't much that pushes a man forward. But when change does come, it often starts inside, in the parts of a person that even steel doors can't reach. Ramirez is one of the first men who shows what that change looks like. He used to burn with anger, the kind that explodes, before he can hold it back. But years of silence forced him to sit with the things he never wanted to face. Now, he spends his days reading philosophy, psychology, history, digging through pages, as if searching for a version of himself that might have existed if life had been different. One night, through the vent, he says, "I used to think I was trapped in here, but I was trapped long before I came." It's the kind of sentence that tells you change is happening quietly, deeply, in ways you don't see at first. Torres finds a shift in reflection. A man who once solved every problem with force now spends his nights telling stories about moments he ignored, friendships he damaged, people he let down, paths he should have walked away from, not because he wants pity, but because speaking truth is sometimes the first step toward healing. Ghost changes in his own way. His drawings become softer over the months, less about escape, and more about possibility. Sunsets, rivers, open hands, images that say, "I may be trapped, but my imagination isn't." Even Darnell, quiet, cautious Darnell, begins writing poems on scraps of paper, turning his pain into something he can hold without fear. These small transformations don't erase the past. They don't change the reasons these men came here, but they show something even more powerful. Human beings are capable of rising in places designed to break them. Some men join educational programs, GED, college by mail, self-study courses that give structure to days that otherwise blend into nothing. Others practice meditation, learning to breathe slowly when the walls feel too tight. Some discover faith, not always religion, sometimes just belief in something bigger than their mistakes. And then there are the men who mentor others, offering advice, sharing survival skills, teaching younger inmates how not to lose themselves. Change here is fragile, delicate, like a flame protected in cupped hands. But even a small flame can light the darkest cell. And as you listen to the soft conversations through the vents, to the pages turning in cells that once echoed only with anger, you begin to understand. The SHU takes a lot from a man. Freedom, movement, connection, but it cannot stop the possibility of becoming someone better. Because sometimes all a person needs is one small glimpse of who he could be to start fighting for that version of himself. Pelican Bay is known for many things: its concrete walls, its isolation units, its unbreakable routines. But there's something else that defines the place, something few outsiders ever truly understand: the silence inside the security housing unit. Silence is more than the absence of sound. It is a presence, a pressure, a constant weight. The men say it feels alive. Some inmates describe like a heavy fog, a thick blanket that mutes not just the world outside, but their own thoughts. Others say it's like the prison itself is listening, waiting for someone to break first. In this chapter, that silence becomes a character of its own, the silence of routine. Every morning, the SHU corridor wakes with mechanical precision. The lights flicker on, the doors remain shut, the footsteps of guards echo and fade. There is no conversation. There is no eye contact. Only the sound of breathing, metal, and distant doors slamming like thunder rolling through a hollow canyon. One inmate, Rico, describes it in a way that stays with you. You start hearing things that ain't even there. The silence is like a mirror that shows you everything you've tried to forget when noise becomes a threat. In the general population units, noise is normal: shouting, laughter, arguments. But in the SHU, noise is a disturbance, and disturbances are punished. A man clear his throat too loudly can trigger anger 2 cells away. A metal cup dropped on the floor can echo like a bomb blast. Tension rises with every unexpected sound. Some inmates tap messages on the walls, tiny coded signals. Others press their ears to the cracks, hungry for something human, even if it's only a whisper. But most stay silent, because in Pelican Bay, silence is safety. A voice from the dark. There's one voice, though, that breaks the pattern. An older inmate named Fletcher, serving a life sentence, speaks through the vent at night. Not every night, just when he feels someone needs it. He tells stories about his childhood, about mistakes, about freedom, about the world before Pelican Bay existed. He isn't trying to inspire anyone. He isn't trying to rebel. He just wants to remind the men around him that they are still alive. And strangely, that whispering voice passing to the vents becomes a lifeline for several inmates, some of whom haven't had real conversations in years. Hallucinations of quiet. Long-term isolation does strange things to the brain. Some inmates begin hearing voices in the silence, whispers, music, even full conversations. Others say they hear the ocean, even though Pelican Bay sits inland. One inmate claims he hears his mother calling his name. Another hears a baby crying. These sounds are not real, but the pain behind them is. Doctors call it sensory deprivation. The inmates call it the mind slipping, the weight of no sound. To someone on the outside, silence might mean peace. In Pelican Bay, silence means no connection, no warmth, no touch, no laughter, no future. It becomes a kind of invisible punishment layered on top of every other punishment. One inmate summed it up best. In here, the silence ain't empty. It's full of everything you don't want to feel. After years in Pelican Bay, after countless days behind steel and concrete, after silence that presses on the soul, there comes a moment. For some men, one day. For others, many, when the door finally opens. It is not triumphant. It is not cinematic. It is quiet. And in that quiet lies both hope and fear. The first step out. The first step out of the cell is heavier than you imagine. Your legs shake, not from weakness, but from the years of stillness, from muscles enused to freedom, from a mind that has learned to live in a box. Some men hesitate. Some step forward quickly, like they are running from the memory of the cell itself. The first breath of open air feels sharp, like sunlight stabbed in the lungs. Every sound, birds, wind, distant traffic, feels exaggerated, alien alive. For many, the world outside is no longer familiar. It has changed. They have changed. And the two don't always fit together easily. Reconnecting with life. Beyond the steel doors, there is hope. Some men have families waiting. Some have friends who never gave up. Some have letters folded in pockets. Words of encouragement carried in their hearts for years. But there is also guilt, regret, the weight of choices that cannot be undone, the fear that the world beyond the walls does not, and perhaps will never, understand them. They learn slowly, step by step, how to navigate freedom, how to interact without suspicion, how to trust again, how to speak without being afraid. That someone will interpret honesty as weakness. The voices that remain, even as men leave, the voices of those left behind remain. Stories of anger, regret, hope, survival echo through the steel corridors of Pelican Bay. Ramirez, Torres, Darnell, Ghost, Fletcher, they are still there. Their lessons, their whispers, their laughter, their pain linger like shadows on concrete. And those who walk free carry pieces of those stories. Reminders that humanity can survive even in the harshest prisons. Reflection and redemption. The story of Pelican Bay is not just about confinement. It is about resilience. It is about the human spirit enduring when the odds seem impossible. It is about finding light in the darkest corners, and about voices that refuse to be silenced. Even when the world has turned its back, beyond the steel doors, beyond the walls that sought to erase them, men speak, remember, and sometimes heal, because freedom is not just the absence of bars. Freedom is the ability to carry your story, your humanity, and your hope with you, no matter what the walls try to take away.